No nanny lasted with the Millionaire's twins, until a black maid did the impossible. The grand clock in the marble-floored foyer chimed 7 times, echoing through the cavernous halls of the Wellington estate. Outside, the sun was just stretching its golden fingers over the skyline of Los Angeles, painting the mansion's immaculate gardens with light. But inside, the mansion felt like anything but a home. Chaos reigned in the nursery. Tiny footsteps, shrill cries, and tantrums that could shake even the steeliest of nerves. The Wellington twins, Nathaniel and Clara, were infamous. Millionaire parents, philanthropic in public, distant in private, had hired every kind of caretaker imaginable. But not one had lasted more than a month. The twins had an uncanny ability to sense weakness, to exploit it, and to push people to the breaking point. Yet today, in the midst of this maelstrom, a soft voice cut through the noise. "Take a deep breath, little ones." "I'm right here," said a young woman, her hands steady, her posture calm, her eyes kind. Her name was Mariah Jackson. She was not glamorous, not trained in elite child-rearing schools, nor did she arrive with certificates dangling from her handbag. She was simply herself, a warm, determined, and resilient woman from South Los Angeles, carrying decades of love and care in her heart. Mariah had accepted the job out of necessity. Yes, but more out of a quiet, stubborn belief that even the most chaotic children deserved a steady hand. She knelt beside Nathaniel, who was flailing on the Persian rug, a storm of tears and fury. Clara, equally ferocious, was pulling at her own hair in the crib. "You're not alone," Mariah murmured. "I see you. I hear you. And I promise I'll help you feel safe." For the first time, the twins paused. Something in her voice, soft, unwavering, like sunlight breaking through clouds, made them hesitate. The days that followed were a test of endurance, patience, and heart. The Wellington twins challenged every norm, shattered every routine, and scoffed at every attempt to discipline them. Previous nannies had tried schedules, bribes, threats, and even tears. But Mariah did something none had dared. She listened. She didn't react to tantrums with anger. She met them with curiosity. She didn't punish, she explained. She didn't just provide meals or baths. She shared stories, laughter, and small victories. At first, the Wellington parents, Charles and Evelyn, were skeptical. "They'll never respond," Evelyn had said, sipping her morning espresso. "You're too soft, Mariah." Mariah only smiled. Maybe they just need someone to see them, truly see them. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the twins began to change. Nathaniel's outbursts softened. Clara's cries became fewer. They learned to wait their turn, to ask for help instead of demanding it, to share in tiny moments of joy. It was in these moments, reading a book together on the sunlit living room floor, or planting daisies in the garden, that Mariah realized something profound. The twins weren't bad. They were lonely. They had been raised in gold cages, loved in theory but never in practice. And she, with nothing but her heart and her unshakable kindness, had become their anchor. One evening, an unexpected storm rolled over Los Angeles. Thunder rattled the windows. Lightning flashed across the sky, and the twins, terrified, clung to Mariah. Nathaniel buried his face into her shoulder. Clara's little fingers gripped her sleeve. "I'm here," Mariah whispered, her voice steady despite the fear that tried to claw its way into her chest. "I won't let anything hurt you." Hours passed, the storm howling outside while inside. A small circle of warmth kept the twins safe. And in that circle, something magical happened. Clara, trembling, looked up at Mariah with wide eyes. "You love us, don't you?" she asked in a tiny, uncertain voice. Mariah swallowed a lump in her throat. She had never considered herself heroic. She was just doing what she felt was right. Yet hearing those words, so raw, so honest, she realized the depth of what had been accomplished. "Yes, sweet Clara," she said softly. "I do." Nathaniel nodded solemnly beside her. "Me too," he whispered. In that moment, the storm outside felt distant, powerless against the quiet storm of connection, trust, and love that had grown inside the mansion walls. Mariah's impact extended beyond the nursery. Charles and Evelyn began to see their children through a new lens. They noticed laughter in the hallways, genuine smiles at breakfast, quiet conversations at bedtime. They witnessed the transformation firsthand and, slowly, began to reflect on their own roles as parents. One Sunday afternoon, Evelyn found Mariah arranging a tea party for the twins in the sunroom. She watched from the doorway, her chest tightening with an unfamiliar emotion. Gratitude. Mariah, Evelyn said softly. I don't know how you've done it. No one has lasted, and now. She trailed off, unable to find the words. Mariah smiled, kneeling to offer a cup of tea to Clara, who giggled in delight. I didn't do anything magical, she said. I just cared. That's all. Charles, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. Sometimes the simplest things are the hardest to remember. Love, patience, attention. You reminded us of that. The turning point came one summer evening when the twins' 10th birthday arrived. The Wellington estate had never hosted such a celebration. The children had never experienced a party where they were truly celebrated for who they were, not just their wealth or social image. Mariah took it upon herself to plan the event, not extravagant or ostentatious, but meaningful. Handmade decorations, favorite foods, and a small stage for a puppet show she had crafted herself. When Nathaniel and Clara walked into the living room and saw the transformation, their eyes sparkled with wonder. It wasn't the grandeur that mattered. It was the thought, the care, the love. And as the day unfolded, laughter ringing through the halls, faces bright with happiness, the twins turned to Mariah. You made this for us, Nathaniel said, voice shaking. Just for us? Clara nodded, tears of joy pooling in her eyes. We've never had someone care like this. Mariah knelt, taking both their hands in hers. And I always will, she whispered. That day, the Wellington twins learned a lesson no nanny, no tutor, no luxury could ever teach, that love, patience, and kindness have the power to change hearts, to heal wounds, and to build unshakable bonds. Years passed. The twins grew into compassionate, confident, and resilient young individuals. Mariah remained a constant in their lives, no longer just a caretaker, but a mentor, a guide, and a cherished member of the family. The mansion, once a fortress of silence and fear, became a home filled with laughter, trust, and warmth. Charles and Evelyn often marveled at the change, privately acknowledging that without Mariah, their children might have remained trapped in the golden cage of isolation. They had thought wealth and influence could shield their children from life's trials, but it had been love, in its most humble and powerful form, that truly transformed them. One quiet evening, Mariah sat in the nursery, now a study filled with books, toys, and drawings. Nathaniel and Clara came in, older, calmer, their faces glowing with gratitude. Clara hugged her tightly. We wouldn't be who we are without you, she said. Nathaniel smiled. You didn't just care for us. You saved us. Mariah's eyes brimmed with tears. She had never considered herself a savior. She had simply offered what the world had often overlooked: unwavering love, patience, and humanity. And in that moment, she understood a truth she would carry forever. No amount of wealth or privilege could replace the power of a kind heart. Sometimes the smallest acts of love create the most extraordinary transformations. The story of Mariah Jackson spread quietly through the circles of those who witnessed it, a testament to the incredible impact one person can have on others' lives. She didn't seek fame or recognition. She only sought to nurture, to guide, and to remind the world that compassion is limitless. And so, the Wellington twins, once feared and misunderstood, grew into young adults who cherished people over possessions, love over status, and kindness over judgment, all because one woman dared to do the impossible. No nanny had lasted with the Millionaire's twins until a black maid did more than survive. She transformed their lives forever. And in the quiet of the Wellington estate, a simple truth endured. Love, patience, and selflessness are the greatest legacies anyone can leave behind. Years after the twins' 10th birthday, life at the Wellington estate settled into a new rhythm. The mansion, once a fortress of cold marble and quiet tension, now hummed with warmth. But life, as always, had a way of testing even the strongest bonds. One afternoon, Mariah received a call from her younger sister in South Los Angeles. Her mother had fallen gravely ill and the family needed her. It was a moment she had long dreaded, her heart tugging in two directions. Could she leave the twins she had nurtured since infancy? Could she step away from the children who had become part of her soul? When she told Charles and Evelyn, she braced for resistance. But Evelyn's response surprised her. Go, she said softly. You've given our children more than we ever could. It's your time to be with your family. They need you too." Even the twins, now nearly teenagers, offered no resistance. Nathaniel took her hands. "You taught us to be brave," he said. "You taught us to care. We'll be okay, just don't forget us." Clara hugged her tightly, whispering, "We'll always be your little family." Mariah left that night, her heart heavy but her soul full. In South Los Angeles, she immersed herself in her mother's care, balancing hospital visits, chores, and the quiet moments that made family life so raw and real. And yet, no matter how busy her days became, her mind wandered to the twins. She worried, but she also hoped. Because love, she had learned, leaves a permanent imprint. Meanwhile, at the Wellington estate, the twins began to navigate life without Mariah physically present. For the first time, they faced the reality of independence, and surprisingly, they thrived. Nathaniel helped Clara with homework, and Clara reminded Nathaniel to slow down when his temper flared. They carried Mariah's lessons like a compass, guiding them through challenges with empathy and patience. One evening, as a rare Los Angeles rainstorm swept the city, Nathaniel sat in the study staring at a photo of Mariah holding him as a toddler. He realized how profoundly she had shaped him, not just as a caretaker, but as a role model, as someone who saw the good in him even when he couldn't see it himself. He leaned back, a sense of resolve settling in his chest. "I want to do something big," he whispered to himself. "Not for money, not for fame, but to make a difference like Mariah did." Clara, peeking over his shoulder, smiled. Maybe that's what she meant all along. Months later, Mariah returned to the Wellington estate, but the reunion was different this time. She walked into the grand foyer and found Nathaniel and Clara hosting a small charity event in the garden, a project they had started to help underprivileged children gain access to books and education. The twins ran toward her, their faces glowing with pride and anticipation. "We did it, Mariah," Clara said, tears in her eyes. "We're giving back just like you taught us." Nathaniel handed her a small plaque. "This is for you, not because you're a maid, not because of anything else, but because you taught us what it means to care." Truly care, Mariah's chest tightened. She had never sought recognition. She had only sought to love, and now, to see her teachings blossom into something tangible, something transformative, she understood the depth of her impact. "You didn't just survive with us," Nathaniel continued. "You saved us. You saved who we could become." And in that moment, Mariah realized something she had never fully admitted. She hadn't just transformed the twins. She had helped the Wellingtons rediscover humanity in themselves. She had reminded a world of privilege that love cannot be bought, only given freely. Life continued to unfold with its mixture of joy and hardship. Mariah's mother eventually passed, leaving her with grief but also a renewed appreciation for life's fleeting moments. The twins flourished in school, balancing academic excellence with compassion and community service. And Mariah? She continued to work quietly, her life a tapestry of care, love, and subtle heroism. Years later, Nathaniel and Clara invited her to their high school graduation. The Wellington estate was alive with celebration, but Mariah's eyes were drawn only to the two figures at the center, the children she had loved, now young adults stepping confidently into the world. Clara, wearing her cap and gown, hugged Mariah tightly. "We wouldn't be here without you," she whispered. Nathaniel stepped forward, his hand extended. "Mariah, everything good in our lives traces back to you. You showed us how to love, how to be human, how to see others. We'll carry it forever." Mariah smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You've carried it all along," she said softly. "I just reminded you. The story of Mariah Jackson, the black maid who did the impossible, became a quiet legend among those who witnessed it. Not because she sought fame, nor because her actions were grand or ostentatious, but because she had dared to love fiercely, to care without limits, and to transform lives through the simplest yet most profound acts of humanity. And in the end, the twins, now young adults ready to step into the world, carried her legacy forward, reminding everyone they met that kindness is stronger than fear, love is more powerful than wealth, and one compassionate heart can change countless lives. Before Mariah arrived at the Wellington estate, The twins had a long history of chaos. She had learned their story from whispered staff rumors and hushed conversations, nannies fleeing in tears, tutors quitting midweek, and housekeepers claiming the children were too wild to manage. Nathaniel, then only 3, had a peculiar habit of hiding in the estate's ornate library, pulling books from the shelves and scattering them across the marble floor. Clara, just 2, would throw tantrums so intense that priceless vases had shattered and furniture had been scratched beyond repair. Every adult who entered their lives saw only misbehavior, only the impossibility of controlling them. Mariah, however, saw something different. She noticed Nathaniel pausing mid-tantrum to stare at a painting of a lion, as if he were seeking courage. She noticed Clara smoothing her doll's hair with care, while screaming at the world for attention. And in those moments she realized that beneath the chaos were tiny hearts longing for connection. Her first weeks were grueling. On the first day, Nathaniel had refused to eat breakfast, screaming until eggs and toast were thrown across the kitchen. Clara had hidden under the sofa for hours, crying every time Mariah approached. Many would have turned away, but Mariah knelt calm and steady, speaking softly to each child. "I know this is hard. I know you're angry and scared, but I won't leave. I'm here. I'll stay with you." It wasn't immediate magic. It wasn't instant obedience. But slowly the twins began to notice her consistency. Nathaniel stopped flinging food at meals, not out of fear, but because he realized Mariah wouldn't shout or punish him. Clara stopped hiding from every shadow, because Mariah never forced her out. She simply waited, always patient, always present. One day, Mariah decided to take the twins outside the mansion grounds. She loaded them into the black SUV with seatbelts fastened and drove to Griffith Park. For Nathaniel and Clara, whose lives had mostly been confined to the pristine mansion, the park was a revelation. The smell of grass, the distant laughter of children, and the sound of birdsong seemed almost magical. Mariah lifted Clara onto the swing, pushing gently while Nathaniel ran ahead to chase squirrels. For a few hours, the mansion, the wealth, and the pressures of expectation melted away. They were simply children, discovering joy for the first time. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky with oranges and pinks, Clara turned to Mariah. "I like this," she whispered, hair sticking to her sweaty forehead. "I like being here." Nathaniel, catching his breath, nodded. "Me too, we should come more often." Mariah smiled. It was small, simple, but in that moment she knew she was breaking a cycle. The twins were learning to experience life, to feel joy without fear, and to trust someone wholly. Back at the estate, Mariah began a nightly ritual with the twins. They would sit together in the nursery, blankets around their shoulders, and she would tell them stories, not the fantastical tales of kings and dragons, but stories of ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of kindness. She told them of nurses who cared for strangers, teachers who stayed late to help students, neighbors who shared what little they had. The twins listened with rapt attention. They began to internalize the lessons, applying them in small, remarkable ways. Nathaniel shared his snacks with the other children at his early preschool, something he had never done before. Clara helped a younger child tie his shoes without being asked. Slowly, the house grew quieter, not because of fear or control, but because compassion was filling the void that chaos had once occupied. Mariah watched them closely, feeling a swelling of pride and wonder. She realized that the true transformation was not in obedience or behavior, but in empathy. She had taught them that the world was bigger than themselves, and in doing so, had opened the first door toward a life of meaningful connection. The most pivotal test came unexpectedly. One evening, a fire broke out in the kitchen. A forgotten candle had toppled onto a dish towel, and flames licked toward the curtains. Smoke filled the hallways and panic surged. Nathaniel froze, eyes wide with fear. Clara began to scream, but Mariah, calm amidst the chaos, grabbed their hands and guided them toward safety. "Stay close to me. We can do this together," she said firmly. Outside in the cool night air, the twins finally understood the depth of her courage. Mariah had faced the flames to ensure their safety, showing them that bravery isn't about the absence of fear. It's about acting despite it. Clara clung to her, whispering, "You're our hero." Nathaniel nodded, tears streaking his cheeks, silently promising himself he would never forget this moment. Years went on, and the twins' growth was remarkable. Nathaniel became a boy known for his leadership, not through dominance but through kindness. Clara developed a reputation for empathy, always standing up for those overlooked or bullied. Their friends, teachers, and even strangers noted the twins' extraordinary capacity for compassion, an inheritance far more valuable than the wealth that surrounded them. When they entered their teenage years, they began to actively involve themselves in charitable work, often inviting Mariah along. Together they organized book drives, food donations, and community events. The twins, once feared and misunderstood, had become beacons of generosity and humanity, and through it all Mariah remained their anchor, guiding with quiet wisdom, never taking credit, always lifting their potential. One afternoon, after a successful charity event benefiting underprivileged children in Los Angeles, Nathaniel turned to Mariah. "Do you remember when we first met you?" he asked, his voice soft, reflective. Clara laughed lightly. "We were terrible. No one could handle us." Mariah smiled, kneeling to their level. "You weren't terrible. You were hurting, and you didn't know how to express it." Nathaniel nodded. "You showed us something no one else could. How to care, how to love, and how to be human. We'll carry that forever." Clara hugged her tightly. "We want the world to know what you did, Mariah. Not because you want praise, but because it matters." Mariah felt a lump in her throat. She had never thought of herself as extraordinary, yet seeing the twins thriving, living the lessons she had patiently instilled, she understood something profound. The greatest acts of heroism often go unnoticed, but their ripples can change countless lives. The Wellington estate continued to flourish, not in wealth or prestige, but in humanity and love. The story of Mariah Jackson, once a black maid from South Los Angeles, became a quiet legend among those who knew the twins' journey. She had done more than survive the impossible. She had transformed it. The twins, now young adults, honored her in ways big and small, establishing scholarships in her name, inviting her to milestone events, and dedicating moments of gratitude throughout their lives. Mariah's life, too, expanded with purpose. She pursued community work, education initiatives, and mentorship programs, continuing to give love, guidance, and hope to those who needed it most. And in every room of the Wellington estate, every smile on Nathaniel and Clara's faces, every act of kindness they performed, the legacy of one selfless, courageous woman endured, a reminder to the world that love, patience, and compassion can do the impossible, even with the most challenging hearts.